Hello, world, and welcome to the first ever episode of Study Hall right here on the Betting News Network, our new college sports betting show here on the BNN. We're very excited to bring you guys college sports coverage, not just for football, but for basketball as well this upcoming season. But football is less than 2 weeks away from our screens. Nate Hornung here, joined by my good friend PJ Glasser. We are going to get that right at the beginning of this episode, that's for sure. PJ Glasser and Nate Hornung here on Study Hall on the Betting News Network, looking at the great sport of college football that is going to be on our screens here in a couple of weeks. PJ, we're 10 days out from week 0 right now. How are you feeling? Are you ready for the football season to begin?
I'm ready, Shags. We're almost there, man. I mean, we're getting to the point where this past week or this upcoming week is the last Saturday without college football until we go all the way through like the end of January or the third week of January. So it's pretty great to think about. And then, with us being big college basketball guys too, it's like we won't have Saturdays without football and basketball until like April, right? So this is kind of that last little week that we have to survive before it all gets going. And really excited because we're going to talk about throughout this hour. And when we do this show over the course of the season, it's wide open, and we got a really strong group of quarterbacks this season. It's definitely top heavy with 6 or solid, really good teams, but there's going to be a bunch of chaos along the way. And I'm fired up, man, especially when we got the AP poll yesterday. When you get that AP poll, that's when oh, it's getting real.
It's actually a perfect segue because, we didn't really have that on the schedule, but we can talk about our initial reactions for the AP poll. Just some housekeeping stuff real quick, folks. This is going to be a recorded show. It's going to be uploaded to our YouTube at Betting News every single day. We're going to be recording on Tuesday nights, so keep that in mind with any numbers we throw out or any news. We are recording Tuesday evenings, hope to be uploaded Wednesday prior to the week's schedule on the weekend. But you said it, the AP poll dropped yesterday. Any major surprises from you or just instant reactions with the top 25 now listed?
Not too many like crazy surprises. I know it was a big talking point that Clemson in the coaches poll was in the top 25 and they're not in the AP poll. So I agree with that. I mean, this Clemson team, their win total is about 7.5, and we've talked about them before doing some shows. And this is just, not one of Dabo's stronger teams. They're going to be good, but there's some uncertainty at quarterback in there in a little bit of a rebuild. But again, I think the big takeaway is the top 10 that we had in the coaches polls, the same as what we have in the AP poll. The ordering is a little different, but overall, I think the top 10 is pretty strong. I always find for me, Shags, every year, Brett McMurphy of ESPN always does a great job. And he's got so many fascinating trends with the AP poll. And the ones that always stick out to me are the fact that in the last 22 seasons, only one preseason number 1 AP poll team has won the national title. Just one. So if you're an Ohio State fan, our boy Fam, who has been giving me a hard time for saying the Buckeyes might struggle this season, excuse me, it's actually 19 of the last 22. So 19 of the last 22. So still crazy percentage. If you're number 1 preseason, usually don't win the national title. And then how about this one, Shags? Every year for the past 23 seasons, except 2019, there has been at least one preseason top 10 team that has finished the year unranked, right? And there were a couple last year. I mean, you think of Clemson, Penn State, and LSU, right? There were a bunch of different top 10 teams. So it's just so funny. We get to this time of the year, we look at the top 10 teams, even just this year, right? You're like, Ohio State, Oregon, Notre Dame. Like, it would be crazy if any of these teams finish outside the top 10. But it's just, it never is that easy, is it? So those are the two I always think of. Preseason number 1, and one of these teams in the top 10 is definitely going to disappoint.
Well, it's interesting. There is one team in the top 10 that you and I are both fading on their win total. So a little foreshadowing there. We'll get there at the end of the show. But the team will be looking to finish possibly unranked this season. For myself, just looking at the SEC specifically, LSU as number 11, clearly there's a lot of hype surrounding Lane Kiffin and what he's doing in Baton Rouge. And that's just one team that I want to see it before I believe it on the field. So we'll see what happens. And then what else caught my eye was the 2 top teams in the SEC, Georgia and Texas, both failed to receive even a single first place vote. You had Miami getting a vote. You had Indiana. You had Notre Dame, obviously Oregon and Ohio State as well. But Georgia and Texas, nobody ranked them as the number one preseason team, which, as you mentioned, might be a good thing for those two teams, but kind of struck out to me just with the Big Ten, dominating college football, 3 straight national champions. Is this the year the SEC gets back on top?
It's such a good point. Yeah, because, Shags, I mean, this offseason is such a big talking point has been who's the best conference in college football, right? Is it the Big Ten or is it the SEC? And I don't think anybody would argue that this year the Big Ten is way more top heavy. Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, I would take all 3 of those teams before I took Georgia and Texas this season, but I'd rather have the depth of the SEC. I think the top 8 or 9 in the SEC is better than the top 8 or 9 in the Big Ten. And you know what? We get some of these teams playing each other. We get Michigan, Oklahoma. We get that Texas, Ohio State game. So excited to watch some of these teams do battle. But it's a good point. And, it really could be a big year for the SEC because, again, not a lot of people really feel like they maybe have a bunch of championship contenders this year. So if an LSU, a Bama, and Oklahoma were to get in the conversation, maybe it'll swing the pendulum a little bit back towards more people thinking the SEC might be back.
Absolutely. Well, we'll find out on the field as things kick off here in just 10 short days. Week 0 is upon us. But PJ, on the show, we're going to talk all kinds of futures, natty futures, Heisman, win totals, conference winners, all of it. But let's start with the big one, the national championship. Do you have any futures out right now for anyone to win the national championship? And if not, who are maybe the teams you're eyeballing or looking to stay away from?
Just one team, Shags, that I bet to win the title, 7-1 on Notre Dame to win it all. I think this might be the year for the Irish, right? We've all talked about the schedule. We know how easy it is. It kind of feels like they don't feel like a Nick Saban Alabama team, but they feel in terms of like they're really 1 or 2 games that you're going to have to sweat, right? With those Bama teams, it was like if they have a trip to Auburn for the Iron Bowl or they got a trip to Baton Rouge against LSU, like those are the games where the ears go up and you're like, maybe they could lose this game. Kind of feels like the same this year for Notre Dame, where the 2 year circling at BYU, home against Miami. And even if they lose both of those games, Shags, honestly, they're probably still kind of in as long as they dominate the rest of the competition. So I think the fact that Notre Dame is pretty much as good of a lock as anybody to make it to the playoff. And then once they get there, Marcus Freeman's been to a national championship. They're going to have one of the best defenses, one of the best O-lines. Their quarterback, CJ Carr, is terrific. So Notre Dame's the only team that I have in pocket. The other team that I'm maybe considering that I'm really torn on this year, Shags, is Texas. And I know you have some positions on Texas, but here's where I'm at on Texas.
Okay.
I kind of think they could be this year's Penn State, where, remember, Penn State had all that hype. It was supposed that was their year last year, right? And they lost that game at home to Oregon. We all know it's well documented the struggles that James Franklin has in big games. But Shags, it was like they had the Civil War the week before that, Oregon State. They had to travel across the country. It was a whiteout. It was a night game. And Penn State still lost that game. And I believe had Penn State won that game, Franklin's still the coach. They go to the playoff, and who knows what their season looks like. And I look at Texas, and I look at that week 2 game against Ohio State.
Yep.
And I think if they lose that game, Shags, it could unravel, right? Because they still got to play Oklahoma in Red River. They still got tough road trips to Tennessee. And I think they're playing at Ole Miss this year. They get somebody at LSU this year is what it is. They get Ole Miss at home. So they got some tough games on that schedule. And again, that was the problem last year where they lost to Ohio State. And then all of a sudden you can only lose one more SEC game. And that's just tough to try and do with the schedules that these teams have. So I kind of think Texas, if they win that Ohio State game, Shags, they just might go ahead and win the whole thing. If they lose that game, I think it could unravel for them. So I'm going back and forth on what to do with the Longhorns. But right now, only team I've bet so far, Notre Dame to win it all.
All right. Well, like you said, I do have some positions on Texas. We'll get into the Longhorns here when we talk about the SEC. Maybe a team I'd stay away from, but I'm right there with you on Notre Dame. I think they're, with the schedule itself, they're almost a lock to make the college football playoff. And then you said it with Marcus Freeman and that talent on that roster. CJ Carr, a Heisman favorite. One more year in that system, one more year more mature. So I think he's due for a big season as well. I have not put any bets in for a natty future. I would lean with Notre Dame. I like that look. A team that I want to believe in, and unfortunately their coach in the postseason just can't seem to get it done, is Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks. I think this team has loaded talent, could compete with Ohio State for the Big Ten. And I mean, returning Dante Moore, who was going to be the number 3 pick in this year's NFL draft, coming back to school now. So I think Oregon's just so talented. But again, can they do it in the postseason when it matters? That'd be a team I'd be looking at all season to back. But no natty futures for myself in the pocket as of right now. I can't bring myself to back Ohio State, especially after what you told me with the AP preseason poll, just not looking like things are going to go well for the Buckeyes. But again, a team that's going to be very, very talented this season. So kind of my two looks right there, just Oregon and Ohio State. It's chalky, I get it, but no natty futures for myself as of right now. We'll see if that changes prior to week 0, but I'll probably just be betting game by game throughout the year. But another national award that everyone's excited about is the Heisman. Of course, the Heisman goes to what we could say the MVP of college football. I do like to remind people it really is a quarterback's award, even though we've had some other positions win it in the past. But as far as Heisman futures, what are you holding as of right now?
Yeah, 2 bets I've made, Shags. The first one, Josh Hoover, 16-1 for Indiana. I think there's a chance the Hoosiers could go back-to-back in the Heisman market this year. And the big reason I like it is because not a lot of people like Indiana to go back-to-back in the Heisman market, right? It's like Indiana's not going to have the Heisman Trophy winner 2 years. Why not? I mean, I thought Hoover was better at TCU than Mendoza was at Cal, right? And I understand maybe Hoover's in a better situation. He's got better coaching there at TCU. Maybe he's going up against some easier defenses. Like each situation is different. But nobody thought Mendoza would be the number 1 pick going into last season. Nobody thought he'd win the Heisman. Whereas like Josh Hoover, there were some people betting him at TCU last year. Yep. So the talent is there. And clearly Cignetti saw something in him for him to be handpicked to bring him in to be the quarterback. And again, Hoover's a gamer and he makes a ton of highlight reel plays. And he just needs to limit the turnovers. And going to a place like Indiana and getting coached by Cignetti, I just think it's the perfect fit. They're going to win a lot of games. They're going to run up the score. He's going to have the stats to show for it. So I think Indiana would be Josh Hoover would be my look. The Indiana quarterback at 16-1. And the other guy I like is Gunnar Stockton at 20-1 that I've bet as well. Again, I think Georgia's probably going to win 10, 11 games this season. So they'll be in the college football playoff conversation. And Stockton, he's got a good O-line this year. The receiving weapons are pretty good. And he was great for Georgia in like big games last year. He showed up in some of those marquee games. And obviously you got to have those Heisman moments. You got to play well in the big games. Not only does Stockton give you the passing numbers, but he gives you the rushing numbers too, which I think is so huge nowadays, those dual threat numbers that a quarterback can give you. So Stockton and Josh Hoover, Shags, would be the 2 guys I like for the Heisman this year.
I like it, man. A couple of long shots there, but Hoover at 16-1. That is a very tasty price in my eyes. I'm sitting here with same situation as the Natty. No Heisman futures in my pocket. A couple of guys that I would target. We did kind of mention both of them. CJ Carr for Notre Dame, and then Dante Moore. Kind of the same thinking, just a quarterback on a national championship caliber team. Probably a good bet for the Heisman, but unfortunately those numbers little low for my liking. So I'll hold off. A couple of guys I definitely would not bet to win the Heisman. You've probably heard this from me before, but Jeremiah Smith won, the wide receiver from the Ohio State Buckeyes. Again, this is a quarterback award. Jeremiah Smith going to have a great season. Probably going to be the best receiver in college football. I just don't think his stats are going to be good enough to propel him over the top of some of these quarterbacks in the class, specifically Julian Sayin, his own teammate. And then another guy, Arch Manning. We saw it last year. Heisman favorite kind of going into the season and just kind of saw the wheels fall off. I kind of think we might see a similar situation this year with Texas. But Manning's just a lot of pressure on the kid. So I feel for him. I hope he does well. But again, I want to see it on the field before I would bet him to win the Heisman. So two guys I'm kind of looking at, not going to bet him though, CJ Carr and Dante Moore. And then two I'd look to avoid would be Jeremiah Smith and Arch Manning. But if you think I'm crazy, if you think I'm stupid, you are welcome to fade me and bet those guys to win the Heisman. And we'll see you in January if it works out or not. But PJ, that is a little bit of a look at the college football landscape as a whole. Let's get a little bit more specific looking at these conferences individually, starting with maybe the weakest Power 4 conference out there, the ACC. According to odds makers, actually the easiest conference to figure out the winner, as Miami is the biggest conference favorite priced on the board as of right now, around minus 140, I believe, to win the ACC. Any bets that you've got in this conference specifically, whether it be win totals to make the playoff, what do you got in the ACC?
2 win totals. I like Shags in the ACC. Nothing for me to win the conference. Again, we had Duke and Virginia last year, right? So this conference could get nuts. Miami's such a big favorite. If they don't win it, you're going to get some good prices on some other teams. But speaking of the Canes, I do like their under 10.5 wins this season. My thinking here is they're at Notre Dame. I think they're going to lose that game. If they lose that game, then the best they could do is 11 wins, and we just need one more loss, even though they're going to be favored in every other game they play outside of the Notre Dame game. If you know college football, you know that Mario Cristobal always loses a game that he shouldn't. Every single year as a double-digit favorite. He did it twice last year against Louisville, against SMU, did it the year before against Syracuse, did it the year before against Georgia Tech, going back to Oregon. He does it every year. So if I think they're going to lose the Notre Dame game, and if Cristobal and Miami just continue to do what they do every year and lose the game that they shouldn't, that gets me to 10 wins. I like under 10.5 for Miami. And then give me over 8.5 for Louisville. I'm just a big fan of Jeff Brom. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country. I kind of think, Shags, that they could beat Ole Miss in week 1. And that's not a game that a lot of people are expecting them to win. So if I get that one, then we're certainly off to a good start. But the offense is going to be solid. It really doesn't matter who he has playing quarterback. This year it's Lincoln Keenholz, who comes over from Ohio State, but he's a QB whisperer. They have one of the best running back rooms in the ACC. The defense is underrated, and the schedule is favorable this year for the Cardinals. So I'll take over 8.5 for Louisville at plus money, and I'll take Miami under 10.5 wins.
Let's go, man. I love that Miami look, and I love the thinking there because I'm with you. I think the Fighting Irish get their revenge this year in South Bend, and then, you're just rooting for Miami not to be perfect. You only need one loss on there. So love the thinking there. And, man, I'm with you on Louisville. I think the Cardinals are going to be frisky this season, could compete for the top of the ACC. For myself, one win total I'm looking at is the California Golden Bears, which, yes, they are part of the ACC, despite being on the opposite coast. But backing the Bears to get over 6.5 wins, got plus money here at plus 118. JKS sophomore season, I'm all in, man. They hit the portal hard. They got a ton of weapons surrounding their lefty quarterback, who's in for a big season. In my eyes, I really like this California schedule, getting some of their tougher games at home, you could say, with, Vatek coming to town. They've got Pittsburgh. The non-conference is what it is with UCLA at Syracuse and Wagner. They're going to beat Wagner, but I could see them getting those other 2 wins against UCLA and Syracuse. And, you got to go to SMU. You got to go to NC State. But other than that, I think this Cal team's gritty. Do I think they're going to compete for the top of the ACC? No, but they get to avoid Miami. They get to avoid Louisville, 2 of those top teams that you mentioned above. So I think Cal's good for 7 wins. That's all we need for plus money. I'm a JKS believer, so I will be back in the Golden Bears to get 7 wins this season in the ACC. We'll see how it goes, man. I am worried about their defense, but we'll hope they can put up 40 a game and maybe be on the right side of this win total for us.
I'll be a little worried about the defense too, Shags, but with Tosh Lapoy taking over now, I think he's going to be a really good head coach. And I think he'll, Wilcox was obviously a great defensive guy. I think he kind of, he was there too long. It was time for them to make a change. But I think they got one of the good young ones in Lapoy. So I'm excited to watch him this year.
Love it, man. Well, those are some ACC win totals from the boys right here. Not too much to talk about in this conference, being one of probably the weakest of the Power Four conference. That moves us on to the next of the weaker Power Four conferences, the Big 12, near and dear to my heart as a Kansas guy here. But I'm very realistic when it comes to the Jayhawks expectations because they should not be very high this season. But with the Big 12, I know you've got a conference winner that you're looking at in the Big 12. So please talk to us about that. Why do you like the Kitty Cats?
I do like the Kitty Cats. Texas Tech is a heavy favorite. They definitely have the best roster, very easy schedule. They should wind up in Arlington again. It would not shock me if they do. But if you kind of believe in karma or that sort of thing with the offseason they had in Brendan Sorsby, maybe the Red Raiders don't go back to back. I've really come around on this team, Shags, and I didn't think I would ever bet them if you would have talked to me in like April or May or something like that. But I'm going with Kansas State to win the Big 12 18-1. I'm taking their win total over 8.5 wins as well. And really what sold me is the new head coach, Colin Klein, who was a great quarterback for Kansas State under Bill Snyder. He's turned himself into a really good coach. He was the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M the last few years. And he worked with a guy who's dual threat in Marcel Reed, who you question the throwing ability a little bit, but he's an unbelievable athlete. And Avery Johnson's the same way. And, Will Howard left Kansas State, Shags, a couple years ago because he knew Avery Johnson was going to take his spot. Will Howard goes off to Ohio State and wins a national championship. So Will Howard saw in practice. Everybody saw in practice what this guy's capable of. There's talent in there. And I just think he's one of those cases of if you get the right coach to unlock something, he could really be good. And he could turn out to be the best quarterback in that league potentially. So I'm buying the upside. I'm buying the upside with Kansas State. And the fact that they don't have to play Texas Tech, they don't play Utah, and they don't play BYU. They avoid the top 3 teams in the league on paper. It might be their year. They're always going to be able to run the ball. They're going to play solid defense, good on the line of scrimmage. Manhattan's always going to be a tough place to play when they're good. If Colin Klein can just find a way to get the most out of Avery Johnson, I think you got some good upside with K-State. So I like the price, 18-1 to win the Big 12, and I like over 8.5 wins as well.
I could just listen to you talk about Colin Klein and Avery Johnson all day long, man, because it's a perfect comparison. Avery Johnson and Marcel Reed, very, very similar skill sets for quarterbacks. So I'm with you. I think Colin Klein is definitely going to get the most out of that guy. I know I got family with ties to Kansas State. They're probably happy hearing all this good news as well. So expectations maybe a little high in Manhattan, but we like the Kitty Cats this season. And then there's a team I notice you're fading as well. Please inform us on that one.
Yes, Shag. Sometimes win totals are low for a reason, and we're taking Iowa State under 4.5 wins this season. Jimmy Rogers is in his first year with Iowa State. He took over as the Washington State coach last year, and he was actually at North Dakota State. So he did a great job FCS level. Gets the job out at Wazoo. Good job year 1. Gets the job now at Iowa State. We know in this era of college football, there are some teams when their coach leaves, they bring a ton of coaches with them, a ton of players with them, and they turn out to be really good in year 1. Like people are expecting maybe Kiffin to be at LSU, Whittingham at Michigan. You could go down the board. I think it's going to be a long year for the Cyclones this year, Shags. I really do. They lose their quarterback, Rocco Beck. They got to replace so many players, coaches, and I really do think they could be the worst team in the Big 12. Now, if you look at the schedule, home against Southeast Missouri, and home against Bowling Green. Should be 2 wins, Shags. After that, though, you could make an argument that every other game is losable, right? Cyhawk this year is at Iowa. They're probably going to lose that. They're at BYU, home against Utah, home against Kansas State, at Arizona. They're probably going to lose those games. They play Oklahoma State. They play Baylor, UCF. Like, these games are toss-ups. But they're going to really have to win like 3 of those toss-up games to get to 5.5, to get to 5 wins. I don't see it. So I'm gonna take the under 4.5 here. I think it's still a rebuild for Iowa State. I think Jimmy Rogers could turn out to be a nice head coach, but not in year 1. So I'm gonna fade the Clones this season.
Yeah, not in year 1, replacing everybody that went to State College with Matt Campbell. So yeah, going to be a character building season for the Cyclones there. And they had a lot of lot of hype last year, opening up the season in Ireland, got the win over K-State, and then kind of wheels fell off. And I believe they made the Big 12 championship the year prior. So, Matt Campbell's had some success, but Iowa State, you got a whole new locker room that you got to get moving in the right direction. So I'm with you. I think they probably could be the bottom of the barrel of the Big 12. One team I will be looking to back this year is the BYU Cougars. Now, I think I got a really good price on this win total. Over 8.5. I only had to pay $1.30, -130 for it. I believe it's all the way up to -150 or so. So if you're listening to this now, obviously do your own research, listen to your heart, that kind of thing, if you still want to back BYU. But 9 wins for this Cougars team that, went to the Big 12 championship last year, didn't lose much, returning senior running back LJ Martin, who went for 1,300 yards, 5.5 per carry last year. Bear Bachmeier, a true freshman last year, over 3,500 total yards, 26 total touchdowns, just 7 picks. Now this guy's a sophomore, kind of like CJ Carr, 1 more year in the system, 1 more year more mature. I really like this BYU offense, and the defense is rock solid as well. Returning 7 starters. They also got Cal's leading tackler in the portal as well. So BYU going to be one of the best in the Big 12. They get to avoid Texas Tech. The Red Raiders, like we said, top of the Big 12, get to avoid them on the schedule. Also avoid Kansas State, who could be another tough game. Now they do have to go to Utah for the Holy War this year, which may or may not be a loss. They got to host Notre Dame, obviously, as well. But everything else on this schedule is very, very winnable, and they get to play some of these bottom teams in the Big 12. You get Iowa State, you get UCF, you get Baylor, you get Kansas, you get Cincinnati. I mean, those are going to be the 5 worst teams in the conference. Should be 5 easy wins there. I don't really see a reason why BYU can't go 10-2 at least, or maybe 9-3. Either way should get us over the win total of 8.5. But I'm big on BYU this year. I loved backing that team last year, especially Bear Bachmeier's rushing yards. So be on the lookout for that prop all season long. But big on the BYU Cougars to make some noise in the Big 12 this year. Wouldn't hate a sprinkle on them at 5-1 to win the conference either. I think you'd be sitting with a good ticket if they do make the Big 12 championship against Texas Tech. So that is what we got.
I like
what
it,
we got. Love it, man. Big 12, Kansas State over, Iowa State under, and BYU over their win totals, and a little sprinkle on Kansas State to win the Big 12, 18-1 for the Wildcats to top that league. Love it. We're moving right along. ACC and Big 12 down. Let's get to the big dogs, starting with the SEC. We will go to the Southeastern Conference. Let's talk about what's going to happen in the SEC this year. Obviously, Georgia and Texas kind of the 2 big dogs of this conference, but a lot of other hungry teams. I believe 7 in the top 13 of the preseason poll for this conference, which is just absurd. But who is going to end up on top? PJ, what do you like in the SEC? I know you're an Alabama guy. Should we start there with the Crimson Tide?
We certainly can, Shags. And as people will find out as we do the show throughout the year, I am by no means a homer with any of my teams. If I think they're going to lose, I'll be the first one to tell you, and I will gladly fade them. I'll bet against my own mother if it wins me money, Shags. Like, at the end of the day, we're in this to win some coin. So
absolutely,
if I don't like Bama, I will let the listeners know. I can promise you that. With that being said, I do think 8.5 wins is too low this season. I think it's too low. Their schedule, when you break it down, it's really going to come down to the 4-game stretch in the middle of the season. They have to play home Georgia, at Tennessee, home A&M, at LSU. Those 4 games are really going to decide it. Odds makers are telling you that maybe there's a chance they go 2-2 in that stretch, and then they lose a game you don't see coming, like the Florida State game last year, because that's been DeBoer's thing, right? So far, he's lost some games that he shouldn't. It was FSU last year. It was the Vandy game the year before that, and the Oklahoma game. So I can understand the line, because you're saying they go 2-2 in that 4-game stretch, maybe lose a game we don't see coming. I don't know if that's going to happen this year, Shags. They're at Kentucky in week 2, and they're going to be starting a quarterback, whether it's Keelan Russell or Austin Mack, who doesn't have a lot of experience, and that's going to be their first true road game. But I think they're going to take care of business. I think Kentucky's probably the worst team in the SEC, them and Arkansas this season. I think they get revenge against Florida State, South Carolina at home, even though Beamer and the Gamecocks have actually played Bama really close in DeBoer's first 2 seasons. I think they'll win that game this year. At Mississippi State is a tricky one. The week before Georgia, is there any look ahead? You're dealing with the Cowbells. Mississippi State was really close to upsetting a lot of teams last year, especially at home. So I could understand maybe that game being a little funny. They're at Vandy this year, but with no Diego Pavia, it doesn't really worry you as much, you would think. And then the key with the Auburn game every year, where is it being played? Is it in Bryant-Denny? Or is it a Jordan Hare? If it's a Jordan Hare, Shags, I'm terrified to death. But in Tuscaloosa, I think they'll be good this year. So I really think their floor is 9-3. And the fact you're giving us 8.5, I'll take the over there. And look, if Keelan Russell, the quarterback, who I think is going to end up be the starter, turns out to be really, really good, and from what I'm hearing at camp, Shags, he might be really, really good, then there's a chance this team could win 10, maybe even 11 games. But 8.5, if this was 9.5, stay away. 8.5, fair. I'll take over on Bama's win total.
Yeah, I feel the same way about BYU with that win total. 9.5, I'm not touching it, but 8.5 absolutely gives you a little more breathing room as well there. So I like it. I mean, we'll see what happens with Alabama, right? With if Keelan Russell gets that starting job, if he's the one leading this offense, but defensively, Bama should be just fine. And then you just broke down the schedule there, right there. So yeah, Alabama should be on their way back to the college football playoff. We'll see at the end of the season. You mentioned it that I have some thoughts on Texas, and I'm going to share those thoughts with you right now. I've paid the juice to fade the Texas Longhorns this season under 9.5 wins, had to pay -135 for it. But look, it's Arch Manning. I get it. There's a lot of hype surrounding this kid. They hit the portal hard. They got a running back, Hollywood Smothers. They got wide receiver, Cam Coleman. They helped him out, right? The defense is going to be rock solid. But Texas, everybody is coming for you. And this SEC schedule is tough, man. Obviously, that week 2 game against Ohio State, yes, it's in Austin, but I do like the Buckeyes to come in and win that one. There's one of only the 3 losses that we need to find on this schedule. Looking at the rest of it, you got to face Oklahoma in the rivalry game, obviously. Oklahoma coming with a vengeance, losing that game last year. I like Oklahoma there. You have to host Ole Miss. You go to LSU. You go to Texas A&M. Are you going to win all of those games? I think I listed off about 5 games right there that could be quote-unquote toss-up games. I don't think Texas wins all of them, and I'm willing to bet that they lose over half of those as well. So, a loss to Ohio State, a loss to Oklahoma, give me one more between Ole Miss at LSU and at Texas A&M. I'm willing to think we're going to get there. I'm willing to bet on Texas probably missing the college football playoff, but going under their 9.5 win total. 10-2 is just little too much for my liking for Arch Manning and Steve Sarkisian in the big 2026. But we will see what happens. But Texas under 9.5 wins, one of my favorite bets in the SEC this year.
Love it, man. I'm looking again. I don't know if there's a bigger game this season than Texas against Ohio State. That game is everything for Texas. If they lose, Shags, I really do think they're going to miss the playoff. I really do. If they win that game, I think they could win the national championship. Like that is how big of a swing that is for everything that you laid out. So I cannot wait for that game. All the pressure is on Texas to come through. They absolutely must win that game. And all off-season, Shags, I thought they would. But as we kind of get closer and closer, I don't know, man. I'm maybe coming around to Ohio State. We'll see, but I can't wait to watch it.
Appointment television, September 12th in Austin there, folks. Ohio State against Texas, national championship caliber game right there early in the season for all of us. PJ, I see on here you've got another orange team from the SEC that you're not fading. You're going to be back in this team this year. Tell me what's happening in Knoxville.
Shags, like Kansas State, Tennessee was a late ad for me, but diving more and more into this team, and as we get closer to the season, I kind of like them, and I took over 7.5 wins on the Volunteers. Now, they had an injury to their safety the other day, which is a tough blow, but I thought one of the more underrated coaching hires this offseason was Josh Heupel going out and getting Jim Knowles to be his defensive coordinator. I know it didn't work out at Penn State last year, but again, I think a lot of that just had to do with kind of the players and their psyche when they lost that Oregon game and the season just kind of unraveled. But if you look at the job he did at Ohio State as the DC, you look at what he did at Oklahoma State. I mean, there's a reason all these teams keep paying him millions of dollars to coach their defense. And so getting him, because we know what Tennessee is going to be offensively. I know they're going to have a true freshman, Faison Brown, starting for them. We don't know what to expect, but the O-line should be good. Receiving core running backs are going to be strong. But if Knowles can get that defense to play at a really strong level, I think this team's going to be good, man. We just talked about Bama. I think they're going to lose to Tennessee this year. Ever since Tennessee's kind of gotten good, Knoxville's just been a tough place to play for them. They've lost their last couple trips there. They also get LSU and Texas at home. If they're able to win 2 of those 3 home games, Texas, Bama, and LSU, if you win 2 of those, I think you go over 7.5 wins, because the road schedule this year is South Carolina, Arkansas, and Vandy in the SEC. So you kind of get 3 of probably the bottom 5 teams in the conference this year, maybe on paper. You also play Kentucky at home as well. And they get Kennesaw State, Furman, and they're at Georgia Tech, who shouldn't be as good this year without Haynes King and some of the pieces they lost. So I think the fact that their hardest games are at home, Knowles is coaching the defense, and I'm just buying in on Heupel being such a good offensive mind and him really developing Faison Brown as a quarterback. Because Shags, think about what he was able to do with Joey Aguilar last season. Everybody thinks Nico's going to be the quarterback. All that goes on with him wanting more money. He leaves. Aguilar comes in like a month before the season. Looks pretty damn good. I think now this entire offseason working with the quarterbacks, I think they'll be solid on that side of the ball. So 7.5 coming around more on Tennessee. I think they upset some teams in Knoxville this season, and I think they get at least 8 wins for us.
Hey, Tennessee hosting Texas as well. I didn't throw that out there as a toss-up game, but maybe I need to. Maybe some things could happen in Tennessee this season. So I like it. And I love what you're saying with the rest of the Tennessee offense as well. Yes, it's a true freshman starting quarterback, but so many weapons around him. Deshaun Bishop coming back as running back along with the receiving core. So the rest of 10 players on the field with Brown are definitely going to help that guy out. So very much looking forward to seeing what happens with the Volunteers. Love that you've got some faith in them, because that gives me more faith in a couple of my SEC win totals, leading us to the one that we are both on, actually, a little PJ and Shaggy collab
Show bet.
on this win total. Watch out, people. You know how these go. But the Texas A&M Aggies under 8.5 wins. Both of us got it in our pocket. We've kind of mentioned it a little bit with Colin Klein leaving, offensive coordinator for Texas A&M, and Marcel Reed last year, no longer their head coach of Kansas State. So I just think this Aggies team takes a complete step back, especially offensively. I mean, they had an incredible season last year, 11 straight wins, lost to Texas in their final regular season game, got not blown out, but got embarrassed by Miami on their own turf in the college football playoff. I just think this offense is not going to be as good as they are next year. I think, or as last year. I think this schedule is very, very tough. And I'll let you take it away from here. Why else are we fading the Aggies this season?
So, Shags, we started off this pod talking about how Brett McMurphy dropped that great trend in the last 23 seasons. There has been one team every year, except for one, where you've had a team in the top 10 of the AP poll that has finished the season unranked. Like, tell me A&M just doesn't feel like that team, right?
This is it, folks.
This is the team. The top 7 is really solid. Now, I talked about how I could see maybe Texas falling apart. I could see it. It's probably unlikely. I can't see a world where Ohio State, Oregon, Notre Dame, Indiana, Georgia, like any of these teams are unranked. Maybe you could make the case for Oklahoma. Their schedule's pretty tough, but I just think the defense is too good. And if Mateer's healthy, I can't see it. Maybe you make the case for Ole Miss. No more Kiffin there. If they lose the LSU game early on in the season, does their season get away with them? I could see that. But I really think it's A&M, Shag, because, I mean, the way that the schedule broke for them last year, they have that late, final 22nd win against Notre Dame. Then they quite literally play all the bottom teams in the SEC. It's kind of unbelievable how it all worked out. They finally stepped up in class. They played a good Texas team to end the year and a good Miami team. And Marcel Reed was just a complete shell of himself. They could do nothing offensively. We talked about Colin Klein earlier in this pod and why we're high on Kansas State. He leaves. I think that's a big deal. They lose a lot on the offensive line. And I compared A&M a lot last year to the New England Patriots of college football, where I just think they were a product of the schedule. They were getting fortunate by who they were playing. And once they stepped up in class, Every time Drake May played against a good team, he turned the ball over and he didn't look like the MVP candidate that people thought he would be. It was just the same with A&M. So even though I'm a fan of Mike Elko, I think he's a really good coach. Their schedule is it's a lot harder this year, Shags. You got road trips to Tuscaloosa this year. You are at Oklahoma this year. You're at LSU this year. And then you also get Tennessee, Texas at home as well. So it's a tough schedule for A&M, man. So I would go under 8.5. I'd maybe look at some alt unders, maybe like, under 7.5 potentially. I could maybe see them being like 7-5 or something like that. But of all the bets we've given out, I kind of think this might be my favorite. Under A&M, 8.5. I'll stamp the floor on this and say this is my favorite future of the offseason.
I love it, man. I love it. Two heads on it as well. Beast McNeese, you like A&M under as well? You like this one? Oh yeah, he likes it as well. Three heads all over the Aggies under. So what could go wrong? You guys know what to do with that information. We'll be on Texas A&M under their win total. Anything else in the SEC that needs to be discussed?
I like Georgia to win the league, plus 260. Shags, they have made the SEC championship game 7 straight years. We don't talk about it. And I mean, the success that Kirby's had, the sustained success has been unbelievable with him in that program. And I get it on paper. Like Georgia just doesn't scare you anymore because of the NIL portal that we're in and all. They don't walk off the bus and like teams don't fear them anymore. But you look up at the end of every season and they're in the SEC championship game. You always know what you're going to get out of them. They're always going to win double-digit games. They're always going to be in Atlanta, and they usually end up winning that game. And I kind of think this is like one of the easier schedules that they've kind of had in the last few years. They're at Bama and they're at Ole Miss. Those are kind of the two games that you look at. They're also home against Oklahoma as well. They play Florida this year, but the game is in Atlanta. But Shags, they get Arkansas, they get Vandy, they get South Carolina, they get Missouri at home, Auburn at home. So I just think the way the schedule breaks, they're going to have at least 10 wins. They're going to be in the SEC title game, and I'll take them at plus 260.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, doing my SEC research and having to double check. And is that really right? Have we really seen them 7 straight years in this conference championship? But yeah, we have. Georgia is just that good. And I'm with you. I think they can get right back to the conference championship. Plus 280, plus 260. I think a great price for the Bulldogs to win this league. So I'm right there with you. This will be my pick to win the SEC as well. Go Dogs. Go Dogs. Yeah. Very high on this team. And you said it, the schedule. Just love that, playing the bottom of the barrel SEC teams. Tough to beat Georgia at home anyways. But yeah, they should be in for another 10-win season. So absolutely love it. Let's wrap up the Power Four, going to the conference that has produced the last 3 national champions, 3 different national champions at that. We're talking about the Big Ten, which is kind of going to be a 3-headed monster this year with Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana, kind of the top teams. And then there's everybody else. But maybe there are going to be some teams that make some noise in this conference. PJ, what do you like in the Big Ten? I see you got a couple of bets for teams to make the playoff this year, including a big old long shot. What do you like from the Big Ten?
Oh, yeah, Shaq. Let's start with the big old long shot, huh? Let's give the people, I mean, if we hit this, oh my God, I'm going to just play this once a week and just toot my own horn. Probably not going to hit Shags, but what the hell? 30-1, let's take a shot. Wisconsin Badgers, they intrigued the hell out of me this year. Luke Fickell, massive year for him. I think a bunch of us love that hire with the job that he did in Cincinnati, going to Wisconsin. It hasn't worked out quite yet, but if you've been following college football, you know this team has just had brutal injury luck at quarterback. I feel like every Wisconsin season, Shags, week 1, week 2, week 3, their quarterback gets hurt and he's out for the year. And it's happened like the last 3 or 4 seasons. It's unbelievable. They bring over Colton Joseph from Old Dominion, who was one of my favorite group of 5 quarterbacks last season. And if he can just stay healthy, I think he's going to be really solid. I think the defense is going to be good. And again, that's the issue with Wisconsin. The defense has been fine under Fickell. It's just they cannot score. They have not been able to have any kind of consistent offense the last 3 seasons. But I think this year they might. But the real reason I like them, the schedule. The Big Four this year on paper in the Big Ten: Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan. They don't play any of those teams. They avoid all of them. USC, who's the best Big Ten opponent on their schedule, they get them at home. They do have to play Notre Dame at the beginning of the year, which they'll probably lose. But again, nobody's really going to hold that to you. So you lose that game. If you lose one more game in the Big Ten, 10-2, I think there's a case to be made for Wisconsin. So I look at the schedule, Shags, and it's like outside of the Notre Dame game, it would not shock me if Wisconsin won like any other game, right? Wouldn't be insane if they went on the road and beat Penn State. Wouldn't be crazy if they beat USC at Iowa, any of these games. So at 30-1, when a team has a schedule like that, I'll take a flyer on the Badgers. And then speaking of those Penn State and Nittany Lions, I like them for similar reasons. Their schedule also favorable. No Ohio State, no Oregon, no Indiana. I like Matt Campbell as a coach. I like the fact he brought Rocco Beck with him. And I talked about, I like the Jim Knowles hire as DC for Tennessee. I thought getting DeAnton Lynn to be his DC at Penn State, very good hire. So Wisconsin 30-1 to make the playoff, Penn State plus 460. Shags, as you know, I mean, everybody that does these preview shows, right, with their teams to make the playoffs, everybody's picking the same kind of iteration of teams, right? It's the same like 15, 18 teams that people are picking. But think about the first 2 years of the college football playoff. Did anybody have Indiana in 2 years ago? Did anybody think 2 group of 5 teams would make it 2 years ago? Like, this is what happens in these tournaments. There's always a team or two that nobody expects. I think that team's got a chance to be Wisconsin this year. So I'll roll with the Badgers at the 30-1 price.
I like it, man. 30-1. I mean, you said it. Tough, game against Notre Dame, but a 10-2 Badgers team. Are you going to leave them out of the Big Ten championship if they win or lose that? Are you going to leave them out of college football playoff? Probably not. So I really like the Colton Joseph move as well. Stud quarterback, should do great things in Madison. And, Camp Randall, not an easy place to go and get a win, like you mentioned with USC going there, I believe, in the middle of October. So
yep. And Riley never wins in the Midwest since he's been in the never wins in the Midwest. So
we're going to get to that. Don't you worry. We're going to get to Lincoln Riley.
There we go. Love it. Yes, sir.
And you've said it and you guys are going to hear this plenty from us talking about the schedule. Well, that's the reality we live in with these extended conferences. It's not like you're playing everybody in the Big Ten anymore. You can avoid the big dogs like Wisconsin gets to do. And looks like hopefully it'll work out for them this season. So the Badgers and the Nittany Lions both to sneak into the playoff, man. I love it. 30-1. It'd be a great hit to kick off the show.
Oh, so good.
It'd be so phenomenal. Good, love it. All right. And then I also see you are on a Big Ten team's win total under. I'm also on a team's win total under. Different teams, but 2 kind of bigger dogs in the Big Ten. Talk to me about yours. Why are you fading this team that everyone else is so high on?
Well, you just talked at the schedule. I mean, Ohio State, I think they have the toughest schedule in college football this season. And again, I think they are potentially this year's Texas, where Texas was that preseason number 1 last year, and they didn't make the college football playoff because the schedule was just too tough. And they lost that early season game to Ohio State, and they just did not have as many chances to make. They didn't have really any wiggle room late in the season, right? Your safety net is taken away. That's why that Ohio State Texas game is just so big for so many reasons. But Shags, we just talked about Wisconsin and Penn State avoid all those top teams. Ohio State does not. We know that they play Michigan, obviously, to end the season. Also a road trip to Indiana, Oregon at home. And then how about some tricky places to play in the Big Ten? Like Iowa, Kinnick, we know that's never an easy place to play. And that's always where top 5 teams go to die. Nebraska hasn't beaten a ranked team since 2016. Beast, maybe this is the year, baby. Maybe this is the year. And they shock the world and upset Nebraska. And then that USC team that you're going to get into, no interest betting USC when they go into the Midwest or the East Coast. But when USC plays in the Coliseum, you got my attention. That's where Lincoln and Riley and the Trojans can win some football games. So when you're at Texas, at USC, at Iowa, at Nebraska, at Indiana, and then you also get Oregon and Michigan at home. Look, I know they might be arguably the most talented team in the country, Shags, but again, wouldn't be insane if they lost 3 games on that schedule, and it certainly wouldn't be insane if they lost 2 games on that schedule. So 10.5 to win total. I'm going to buy the juice, and I'm going to take under on the Buckeyes.
Let's go, man. That takes some stones, PJ. Fade the
Sure
number
does.
one
Yeah.
preseason
Don't
team.
feel
But
great about it, gonna be honest. Don't feel
you,
great.
you spelled it out, though. I mean, 2 losses is all you need. And I mean, there's a lot of tough games in there and tough travel spots for the Buckeyes who, I mean, clearly they're thinking about January already, right? They are already thinking we've got to go to the national championship. So yeah, maybe they're caught looking ahead, sleepwalking through one game, and maybe you get you an extra loss. So I like it. Under 10.5. I'm going to let you bet that by yourself. I'm not going to put that one in the ticker, but I'll be cheering for you this season as we fade the Buckeyes. And then, yes, you said it, I will be fading the USC Trojans this upcoming season under 8.5 wins at -125. Let's look at their schedule, folks. Let's look at their schedule because it is tough. They don't avoid the top 3 teams in the Big Ten. They have to play Oregon. They have to play Ohio State. They have to play Indiana. Look, we only need 4 losses, right? 4 losses gets us under the 8.5 win total. You host Oregon. Oregon, I think, is good enough to go into the Coliseum. They're not dealing with any time zone issues. I think Oregon can get that win. You host Ohio State. Ohio State coming off a bye that week. I also think they're just too good for that time change, time travel to make a difference. So I like the Buckeyes there. And then you got to go to Bloomington. We know how that works out for USC. In theory, I see them losing all 3 of those games. There's 3 of the 4 losses we need already. Looking at the other games on their schedule, at Penn State, at Wisconsin, at UCLA. I mean, all we need is one real slip up, right? Even at Rutgers. Rutgers isn't going to be good, but maybe they're sleeping in that first Big Ten game looking ahead to hosting Oregon. But I'm comfortable betting on 4 losses for the USC Trojans under 8.5 wins this season. -125 is what I had to pay for it. But I did put 2 units on this guy, and I am not a 2-unit guy, folks. But 2 units on this bad boy at -125. So we'll see if it works out. I will stamp this one. This is my favorite win total of the season for myself, hence the 2 units on this bad boy. So USC, I'll be fading you all season long. Hope it works out.
I love it. I love it. Look, I think for you to win the bet for sure, they got to lose the Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana game, which I think they probably do. But yeah, if they just continue to do what they've been doing and just go to the Midwest and the East Coast and lose these games, I think you're in a good spot. And until Lincoln Riley can prove to me that he can do that, I think the under is the only look with USA.
100%. I know a lot of people are liking USC this year, maybe looping them in as, a top 4 team in the Big Ten, but I don't see it. We'll see what happens. I'm willing to fade it. So fading USC this upcoming season. PJ, anything else in the Big Ten that we did not discuss?
That was all. Wisconsin to make the playoff, Penn State to make the playoff. I like Ohio State under 10.5 wins, and then Josh Hoover to win the Heisman as we gave out earlier in the show. I do like Oregon, like a lot of people, but they are just becoming way too trendy. Shags, I've started to say this. I've started to say this the last couple weeks. The 2 teams, one in the NFL, one in college football, that it just seems like all these shows I listen to, all these guests that come on, all these people, right? Like you kind of realize that people have the same line of thinking. College football, everybody loves Oregon. NFL, everybody loves the Cowboys. I can't tell you how many people have come on and been like, oh, I like Dallas this year. That defense much improved. Dak and the offense is good. And I'm like, we're really going to trust the Cowboys when everybody's on them. And it's the same with Oregon. I got no problem backing Oregon in the regular season. That's fine. I think they're going to be in the playoff. I think Dante Moore is the best quarterback in the country. You don't have to sell me on how good Oregon is. I just ask you, the audience, the person the watching this, like, what's the biggest game Dan Lanning has won since he's been in UG?
Right.
It's probably beating James Franklin and Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. That's probably the biggest one. So it's going to be tough for him to make that leap to go from like a guy who really doesn't have like any big wins in his career to probably having to win like 3 big ones, 4 big ones to win a national.
back to back.
I just think it's too big of a jump, and they lose both their coordinators, Shags. That's not getting talked about enough, right? You talked about Cal earlier. They lose their defensive coordinator, Taj Lapoy, and they lose their OC, Will Stein. And I understand they're keeping it in-house. They're promoting guys. But this is what separates the great coaches from the really good coaches in college football. Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, these guys can withstand coordinators leaving. Ask Dabo Sweeney how Clemson's been doing ever since Brett Venables and Tony Elliott have left him, right? You just don't know. I think Dan Lanning's really good, but I don't know how you can't be concerned the fact that both coordinators are leaving him in the same season. So I can't get there with Oregon big picture. Again, it seems like they're just way too popular right now.
Mm-hmm. No, they are a very, very popular pick. No doubt about it. I've seen plenty of Oregon hype this upcoming season, and I'm on board. I'm ready to do it, but we'll see what happens. You mentioned it. Dan Lanning hasn't proven himself in the postseason, and yeah, he's going to have to do it time and time again just to get there. So, yeah, I totally understand the hesitation with Oregon, especially when it comes to the postseason. All right, we discussed the Power Four conferences. We need to get into a little bit of the G5, or rather the G6, with the Pac-12 making its rebirth this season. Not necessarily into the Power Four conferences, in my opinion. So we'll throw the Pac-12 into the G6. But PJ, anything in the G6 conferences that's kind of jumping out to you?
There isn't, Shags, and I'll tell you why I kind of stay away from the G6, because so many of these rosters just get absolutely depleted by the portal and these big boys taking away all the good players and all the turnover roster. Like, sure, you get coaches to stay, you get certain players to stay, and there are some teams in that group of five that do have a lot of player retention that I'm sure you'll talk about that you either like or maybe you don't like here in the group of five. For me, I kind of like to bet those teams game by game. I think it's way too tough to figure out oh, this coach has brought in like 5 players from this school, or, and I'm just like, it's too tough these days to deal with those mid-majors, if you will, in the group of 5. So I'm staying away. Nothing for me. I do think Navy's intriguing this season. I do like them quite a bit. I kind of like Hawaii a little bit this season. New Mexico was a team I really enjoyed last year. If anything, I would back the coaches that I really like in the G5, but ultimately stayed away. So nothing for me, and I will leave the floor to you. And I'm sure I maybe will tail one of these or two if maybe have myself maybe a little action in the group of 5.
Absolutely. Well, I found one win total in these G5, G6 conferences, and then a couple of conference winners I'll get into pretty quickly. But with the Pac-12 being rebirthed this year, revamped, whatever you want to call it, I had to find one win total, and I will be fading a team that's probably going to finish in the bottom of the Pac-12 or near the bottom. The Oregon State Beavers, one of the original members of the Pac-12, still there. We're going to fade their win total under 4.5 this season. And here we go again, talking about the schedule. They've got Malik Murphy, obviously, as their quarterback, coming over from Texas and Duke, but he just hasn't lived up to the hype coming from Power 4 school. New head coach for the Oregon State Beavers, new defensive coordinator as well. They were outside the top 100 last year, giving up nearly 30 points per game. I just don't think that's going to change much. I think this is going to be a rough season for the Oregon State Beavers. And again, their schedule. They open up against 2 tough Big 12 teams at Houston and hosting Texas Tech. I think there's 2 losses right there. I'll give them a win over UTEP in their other non-conference game. But then they've got to host the Montana Grizzlies, who are an FCS school, but are regularly a great team in the FCS. Made it to the semifinals last year, the championship 2 years prior, I believe. So that's more of a toss-up than I think the betting odds are going to suggest. And then, again, they're probably going to be one of the worst teams in the Pac-12. They only have 11 games scheduled right now. Pac-12 doing a Week 12 flex game. More than likely, they're going to face off against Washington State, but I think the Cougars are good to beat them twice. They have to go to Boise. They have to go to Fresno. San Diego State's going to be tough. Texas State's going to be a very tough team. And ultimately, I only see about 4 or 5 games that are winnable. Montana, UTEP, at Colorado State, and Utah State. And again, even if they win all 4 of those games, that's not getting over the 4.5 win total. So I think Oregon State just going to be a very bad team in the Pac-12 this year. So I'll be fading their win total under the 4.5. And then 2 smaller conference winners. You mentioned Navy in the American. I don't hate it, but I did go a different route with my American winner. I went with the UTSA Roadrunners to win the American at plus 475. Now, Navy is the betting favorite, pretty much everywhere. There was one book actually hanging UTSA as the favorite, but UTSA returning plenty, 6 starters, including fifth-year senior quarterback Owen McCowan, who's a dual threat guy, been the starter the past 2 years. I think he's just ready for a really good season. They've got guys that are looking for a bigger role. Will Henderson, David Amador, AJ Wilson, all guys that were very, very productive offensively last year, looking for just a bigger role this year. Top 5 in scoring as well. Returned more offensive starters than anyone else in this league besides Army, whom they avoid on the schedule. They do get Navy at home, which makes that one a little easier as well. They're also going to be battle tested. They have to go to Texas State and go to Texas early in the season. So I think, playing those games, maybe the rest of the American Conference feels a little easier. So I just think this conference is wide open. UTSA, with all their returning production, I'll be backing them to win the American. And then the MAC. Everybody loves the MAC. Weekday football in November. I'll be back in Western Michigan to win the MAC at plus 420. They won it last year, returning plenty of production, including quarterback Brock Lowry and running back Jalen Buckley. Both were 1,000-yard rushers last year. So again, Western Michigan just returning plenty. Couple of new teams in the MAC with Sacramento State joining, but Western Michigan kind of the top dog in this conference. I think they're just going to be able to steamroll everybody. Top 10 in points allowed last year defensively. So again, Western Michigan with the best offensive line, quarterback, and running back in the MAC. I think they could take that. So Western Michigan to win the MAC at plus 420, UTSA to win the American at plus 475, and then fading the Oregon State Beavers on their under 4.5 win total this season. That's what I like in the G5, G6 conferences.
Love it, Shags. Western Michigan's a team that's very intriguing. They play Boise, I believe, like early on week 3 or something.
Yes.
That's might be the game of the year in the Group 5. I can't wait for that one. That'll be a ton of fun. UTSA, I mean, Jeff Traylor, I think, is one of the best Group of 5 coaches. And like you said, McCown's back. He's been there a while. They're going to be a really good offense, and they usually don't lose in the Alamo Dome. So I like all your plays, man. Oregon State, going to be an interesting one as well. I'll be rooting for you. I kind of like that. I do like that price on UTSA because look, I'm a Maryland guy. I love me some Navy. They did lose a lot on that team though. And even though there is a lot to like, they did bring in some guys. I think Brian Newberry's done a great job there as coach. I think that is some good value on UTSA. So I like that play a lot.
And yeah, it's just wide open. Like most of the market, you had Navy at plus 350, UTSA sitting plus 450, plus 475. And then I believe Army was the next one at plus 550. That was kind of it. So, if you feel like fading the service academies, maybe UTSA is the move in the American. But that's how I saw it. That's what I got in the G5 conferences. So, PJ, it's been a great first episode of Study Hall right here on the Betting News Network. Anything else we got to tell the kids in this futures episode? We will be breaking down week 0 next week. Again, be on the lookout for these recordings every single Wednesday on the Betting News YouTube. But any last words for the kiddos?
Nothing else from me, Shag. Just excited, man. Episode 1 in the books. And I mean, the next time we do this, we'll be actually talking about games. It'll be game week, man. So can't wait for it. All this futures talk and previewing the season and all these sorts of things, it'll be over. And we'll have actual games to talk about. I can't wait.
Feels like I'm actually back in college, like researching, getting ready for a final, right? And now I just need it to start, right? I need it to be finals week. I need the work to, manifest and actually produce something. So we'll see what happens. But yes, looking forward to a very, very exciting college football season that is upon us very, very shortly. That is all we got from Study Hall right here on the Betting News Network. Again, we'll have these episodes out weekly prior to each Saturday slate. And you said it, next week, we will be breaking down the week 0 slate, giving you guys some best bets and picks for the entire betting board. I think that's all we got from all of us here at Betting News. Appreciate you guys watching, listening along. Be sure to check out the recording, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you guys on the next one. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening. I guess you're watching this recorded, so I don't really know how to end these things, but we will see you guys later. Enjoy the rest of your day.